Hello and welcome to the latest Turf Matters video. Now this job does take us to some wonderful places, and today I'm joined by Lee Strutt, who's the golf courses manager at the Royal Automobile Club in Epsom, one of the finest golf courses you'll find in this part of the country. Now Lee just took on this job about 2 years ago, was it, Lee?
Yeah, about 2 years ago, yes.
And you're just getting your teeth into it. So what was it that encouraged you to take this challenge on? I know you moved down from Scotland. What was it about the Royal Automobile Club that you felt you could leave your mark down here?
I think the club's a big organisation. You know, we have two clubhouses, and 550 staff. But mainly it was because we have two golf courses, and the club were really looking at doing a lot of development work on both golf courses, upgrading the quality, and there was a number of projects that the club were very keen to start. We were looking at to redo the bunkers on both golf courses, redo the irrigation system. There's a reservoir to go in, Woodland management program to be looked at, as well as really getting the old course into the top 100. So there was a number of challenges and projects. All of them had really done before, but never had done them as a collective. So it was a big job, undertaking all the projects and actually bring them all in under one house.
Have you given yourself a time limit to get those jobs done? Have you broken them down into individual projects that will be done, or are they all carrying on concurrently?
They all sort of one follows the other one. We're under about a five-year program, and part of the club's objectives is to get the old course in the top 100.
Is that the Golf World ranking? Monthly?
Well, it's very interesting that you say that, because each organisation has a different remit. So we've been very open and transparent with the membership and saying that we want to get in the top 100, whichever the publication is. But more importantly, it's not the recognition of being top 100, but it's probably more the recognition that the quality of the golf courses have been brought up to a standard where it's now recognised in the top 100.
It must be something. I'm very surprised that it hasn't featured. The Royal Automobile Club hasn't featured in the top 100 in the past. And some of it's down to the fact that people market themselves. New golf clubs get marketed to try and get themselves in, because that's the way they can promote themselves. Why do you think you haven't been, or the golf club hasn't been in the top 100 until hopefully the next time the rankings come out?
I mean, I think part of it is the club is a very private club. The only way that you can really play the golf courses is either as a member or a member's guest. So part of the criteria on some of the rankings is that it should be open to the public. So I know that will rule it out in other uncertain terms. I think also the club's never really actively gone to get ranked, and I think that's part of it. And I think the club and the membership have really looked at their products, and they found that it's probably the one key area that they could really enhance and improve. So that's been set as one of our priorities and our objectives to address.
Yeah. So when will the next rankings be coming out? And are you be happy for the next ones or the next but one?
I think they look at them every year. So, I mean, our aim is that 2021 will be the point where we would ask to be considered. So they would come and look at it. I think one of the key things is, does it matter that we're 102 or we're 98? I think it's more important that the course is now recognised that it's the playability, because we all know the top 100 can be very subjective. And a lot of it's to do with not just the golf course, it's how you looked after when you arrive, the food, the booking system. It's not just the golf course on its own.
Now, obviously, there are things that you'll know from your experience on a number of golf courses. What it'll take, what magic trick can you put in place that will jump up the rankings or get closer to that 100 straight off the bat? Is there one that you've talked about, the bunkers? If you were to prioritise the improvements you're going to be putting in place, which ones do you think will have the biggest impact when it comes to ranking?
I think that one of our key issues is our woodland management. So slowly but surely, with a lot of golf courses, trees have really dominated the courses.
Down here particularly.
Yes, I mean, Surrey is known as a very wooded county. Now, part of our objectives is actually return the courses back to their downland identity, which means quite a lot of trees are going to have to go. So the look and the feel of the course are going to really change. So I think part of the interest of the course will be actually the courses are going to go for a visual change in their character, and actually trying to bring Herbert Fowler's original design back to life and attribute the downland identity back to the course.
Do you have photographs from those times where you can show the members this is how it actually should be looking?
Yes.
I know that people remember the trees and they've been here a long time, but when you go back and see the old black and white pictures, when you can see for miles, where you can only see for...
Yes. I mean, we're quite, I guess like a lot of courses would be quite fortunate. We used Tom McKenzie as our course designer to actually look at bringing Fowler's identity back. And he used a lot of pictures from Britain from the air. So the government commissioned a lot of aerial pictures of the whole of the UK. And we found...
When was that?
We had some photos done during the 40s, and we had some photos done during the sort of 60s, 70s. And from the 40s until now, our woodlands have grown by 22%. So, and that's land mass. So really a quarter of the course now has been taken over by trees. And we can see quite clearly that actually there's been a big move away from its identity. I think Hankley Common is a very good example of returning the site back to its original features, which was the heather and the landscape, which were hidden by the trees.
But that was a dramatic change at Hankley Common, wasn't it?
It is. I mean, I think that we're not going to be on that scale, but I think certainly within the membership, it will be quite a contrast from the course that they joined.
Yeah.
But it's the club going back to its heritage, really.
Who is it you're working with in the arboricultural side of things?
We have a local tree consultant called SJA Trees, and he undertakes a lot of work locally. So he understands the Surrey Downs, Epsom Downs, and really what the downland identity is, actually what trees should be there, what trees shouldn't be there, and working between SJA and Tom McKenzie, it's making sure that the landscape and the golf landscape work hand in hand, as well as showing off views back to our glorious clubhouse.
Yeah, and this will be phased presumably. You have areas where you think, well, this will make the biggest impact quickly, or this will not frighten the horses quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think having undertaken tree woodland program at Richmond, it's very easy to frighten people. People get very emotional about trees, and I think the key thing is to communicate A, the improvement, but B, the work that we do is sensitive. Afterwards it looks like that it's been done professionally, it's clean and it's tidy. So we focus on very small copses where we've gone in and we've done the key work, and it's actually growing confidence within the membership, and the membership having confidence that the team are doing a very good, clear job, that we're not just hacking trees down for the sake of it. There's an actual method in our plan. So we're looking to have a 10-year program. And one of the things that we wanted a 10-year program was so that once we got to year 11, we go back to that original zone, and we're now just doing maintenance in those zones, whereas these zones now are going to be major clearances. Now, you
also mentioned the bunker side of things. Is it
Better Billy bunker we use as a liner, yes.
Yeah. How many bunkers have you got? Because that sounds like you can't just do that overnight, either.
No, we originally had 133 bunkers, and we're now...
Over the two courses?
No, over one course.
No.
Yeah, that's a lot of bunkers and a lot of washouts, and we're now down to 81. We had a complete review of what bunkers were
with Tom.
With Tom was right for the course in this day and age, was right for our membership, and was right for our maintenance. And one of the things that we really wanted to look at was actually the bunker specification and performance. We knew that we wanted a liner, and we'd already done some trial work on using some different liners. We looked at the sand, we looked at the angles, we looked at actually how it's going to be maintained. Could our members get in and out? Our average age of our membership here is like 62. So it's no point having bunkers that people can't get in and out properly because the sides would fall in. We designed them that they were going to be hand raked, not machine raked. So a lot of detail work went into the planning. So it wasn't just a case of saying to Tom, go off and do a design. We had to make sure there was an impact on really the maintenance so that we could show the design off. And I think it was quite hard for Tom to replicate someone else's work because every architect is very individual. We can't bring Herbert Fowler back. So I think Tom done a very good job of trying to embrace Herbert Fowler's style
the
and
flavour
theme and really bring that in. And really that's just, the bunkers have done, which is part of the jigsaw puzzle. The agronomy is another part of the jigsaw puzzle. The Woodland's another part of the jigsaw puzzle.
Have you the agronomy side of things? What have you brought to the agronomy, Lee, that perhaps wasn't there before? Your style, bringing that in. How would you epitomise your own style?
I think I don't think two head greenkeeper course managers manage the same. Everyone has a different perspective on what they believe is the right way to address the management. We've gone really back to basics. We keep it very simple. But one of the key things that we've done is we've done a lot of benchmarking. So when I first come here, we wanted to test, how much thatch, how much organic matter, what was the root depth like, what was our height of cut, how smooth, how true, what speed.
Very different over the holes?
And actually how they compared from one course to the other. And it wasn't, it's never a negative to your predecessor, but really what I wanted to do was measure the impact I had on the site. So I wanted to measure, this is what I started with, and we've been tracking our progress. And a part of that is, as much for me to alter my management style. As we make progress, we want to highlight, actually we're now hitting, a point of diminishing returns. We can keep doing that, but actually we're not getting any more return. And actually start to see how each part of our cultural practices have an influence on the performance. So it's not just seeing the progress, but actually start to identify if we do certain things in certain ways, we're going to get certain results. And some of that's really been come back from my tournament experience where they're trying to make sure that all 18 holes are pretty consistent, and they're actually starting to look at, okay, well, if we double hand cut, if we top dress, how is that changing the playing surfaces? And part of that is actually to educate our team so they understand, what we do and why we do it.
It seems strange. You think it's such a logical way of operating, giving yourself, and you can show the degrees of improvement. And why did it take so long to come in, that philosophy and way of doing things, and why is not more people doing that at the moment?
I think it's because part of it is some of the new technology. I mean, obviously stint meters been around for years. Moisture meters have been relatively new for the last sort of 10 years. Smoothness and trueness is probably the last 5-6 years.
So now you've got the tools to do it.
So, but you have the firmness meters and the Clegg meters. It's for me, it was just a light bulb moment. It's like, actually, I want to pull all of these together, and we identified on each course. We identified our best green and our worst green on each course, and then we sort of said, well, how relevant is it to have this data set once a year? Actually, what we need to do is actually have it monthly, so that what I didn't want to do is have a standard that we said, right, okay, well, we test in June, but we know that we can't get that performance in the winter time. So, but at least now I can turn around and say, I compare October this year with October last year, and it's just to communicate to the membership.
And the more years you're doing it, the more bank of data you'll have behind you.
Yes, and I think, and that bank of data gives you strength in, some of my philosophies I need to amend, I need to adjust. And as we, each year you get new products on the market and you sort of think, actually, I might quite fancy this fertilizer. Oh, I've seen this new machine. And now you can actually, we can trial different machines and straight away and saying, actually, how does this change the performance of the surface? Are we going to get improvement? Is there a value in that investment? And I think, really golf courses are a business, and it's important that I can communicate to my club and turn around and say, as a business proposal, that if we invest in either these materials or this process or this equipment, I can actually show them that actually we're going to get a return.
Yeah.
Whereas before, greenkeepers would say, well, I know it could get better, but actually I can't prove it.
It's the old art against science, isn't it?
Yes.
More science coming. You don't ever want to lose the art.
Yes.
But if they've got the science to back it up, so much the better.
I mean, I think that's really key, because I kind of feel that I am part of the old school, but I
You've
also
got the beard. You're not that.
no. But I also feel that I'm part of the new school. When I kind of look at it, and I do have some people say to me, it's an art, not a science, and I think there is a bit of both. I think the science can measure your art form. So it's just like, if you do certain things in a certain way, you can measure it, and if you can measure it, you can teach that to other people. And I think the classic one, what used to be, was you used to send someone out hand watering and say, well, give it a good watering. Well, what's a good watering? Is that a quick splash for 5 seconds, or is that standing there for an hour and actually dousing it?
Yeah.
Whereas now with moisture meters, you can say to them, keep watering it until you're into that zone. So the guys are now understanding that actually the difference between underwatering and overwatering. So I think with technology, we're teaching, our team to understand those processes better. And I think this is where the art meets the science, because the science measures the art form, and I think that's really how that works.
Now you've had a stellar career. You've worked at some wonderful golf courses up and down. You've even gone into Scotland for a short period of time as well. Now that's been underpinned by the education you've worked through and the qualifications you've now got. How can you, coming back to measure, how can you measure the success of your career on the back of the fact that you've worked so hard educationally to get yourself into this position?
I think that it's driven by determination. I was one that left school hating education with a passion. My first college I went to, we didn't have a turf college course. We were doing horticulture, and I shared the classroom with a lot of people that were florists and that, and I hated education even more, doing a job that I really enjoyed, and I was very fortunate to work for a guy called Adrian Archer, who used to be the course manager at Broadstone Golf Club, and he embraced me into going back to college, and I'm very thankful for him, because I started learning something that I actually had a genuine interest in. And once you've done one college course, I wanted to learn a bit more, and then I kind of really met so many different people, and part of going on another college course was not only learning more about the job that I'd done but I also recognised it was an opportunity to meet new people, and I've been very fortunate about that. And I don't know, apart from having certificates or letters after your name, I guess the measure of the education is the knowledge that you've learned. And I've learned that the more you learn, the more that you realise there is so much more to learn. But I think it's that understanding, and I think it's when that trigger point is actually where you can now pass on that knowledge to help people form their understanding, and they then start forming their own philosophies. And I think that's been probably the mark of success I look at now is, I get asked to do talks, and I do the FDMI mentoring, and I feel very, that's my benchmark, that I'm very proud that people say, can you help me develop other people's careers? And I think that's part of giving something back. And
you've had the Master Greenkeeper certificate, what was it, 15 years now? Must have been one of the last people at the late Neil Thomas signed a certificate for you. And that's been a hugely successful programme within Biggar, and an aspiration for an awful lot of people, not just in the UK but all over the world, to become Master Greenkeepers.
I mean, it's something that I'm extremely passionate about. I think the key thing about Master Greenkeeper, it really does help everyone. It helps the individual to develop themselves, and it's them that's already initiated the programme. It helps the team because it looks about staff development. It helps improve the golf course. It helps improves the golf club for the membership. It helps the industry. It helps everyone. And I think it's and people have to give a lot of their own time to achieve that. I'm I'm looking forward to the day where we have 100 guys across the world.
How many is about 60?
We're into sort of our 70s,
Oh.
so I think, which I think is tremendous. And, I feel extremely proud when I go to the US, and I have US guys turn around and say, this is the premier award worldwide. And they openly rank it higher than their own. They are very, very similar, and they're two tremendous awards. But I think it's, you really get to see the passionate people that go above and beyond wanting to do something. And the journey, I think, with the Master Greenkeeper, I've really enjoyed. I've done people like Ken Seams and, I've forgotten his name, at Loch Lomond. David Cole.
David Cole, yeah.
David Cole at Loch Lomond. And I've done local guys that have had, there's been 3 staff. And to see the extremes, and it's really good that you've got a qualification that can really do
Straddle both sides.
Yes, it can, but it's the personal journey. Everyone's on a personal journey, sort of doing it, and it's been, in really rewarding, and you make friends, and we're in that type of industry where, everyone that I've assessed, good, bad, and indifferent, you struck up a friendship because you're helping people on their own journey.
Now we're sitting in your office here, we're surrounded with memorabilia from Ryder Cups, from US Opens.
Yeah.
You've been lucky enough, fortunate, you have to work very hard, I know, when you go to these events, but you've been very lucky to go to some of the foremost golfing events in the calendar.
Yes.
And that's obviously helped your education and your knowledge base as well.
I mean, I think I think there's an element that you do make your own luck. I mean, I've been really fortunate that I've met people and, even been to the point of being a bit ballsy and sort of said, oh, can I come?
Yeah.
And I think, there is a lot to be said for, you don't get what you don't ask for. And at the very worst, I've always been taught, well, the worst thing people can say is no. I've been very fortunate that really no one's ever said no to me.
Yeah.
And I've been fortunate. And then one opportunity springs onto another. And I think once you do travel and you do get to meet so many people that you realise, actually, there's so many opportunities out there. The only person that's holding yourself back is normally yourself. But like I say, it's just you do one thing and then you get associated with it, and actually, yes, it does get easier because it's just they know that's what you do, and you then become reliable and dependable. And I think that's one of the key things about tournaments is, are you trustworthy? Are you going to turn up on time? You're not going to make a mistake. You'll be a great team member. And I think then you get recognised for that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
and then it gets, like I say, it gets easier.
No, I mean you're not an old guy. You're
No, not at all.
The beard again. It's the gold grey beard.
Yes.
But what advice would you give to someone looking to enter the greenkeeping profession? Because obviously, through your career, you've had a wonderful life in the back of your career. What advice would you give to a young guy or girl wishing to come into the profession?
I mean, it's quite interesting. You do see a lot of people very keen to progress their career and get those, the next level up and earn more money. I mean, I think really to have a lifelong career, it's about learning the principles, learning your job, and actually learning it well. Because once you become a manager, you're not the machine operator anymore. You've got to train someone up, and you've got to train people up to say, this is why you're doing it, and this is actually how it has an impact on the agronomy. This is how it has an impact for the player, the golf user. This is how it's going to have an impact on the environment. And you can only do that if you've really founded or grounded your experience in doing the job itself. It's very quickly to promote yourself off the golf course, but then how do you teach people if you've never done it yourself?
Yeah.
And I think that's, if you turn around and say someone's starting at 18, the way that retirement's going, it's going to be 68, 69 before you retire. That's 50 years. So if you think, well, if 20% of my career time is spent actually learning my trade really, really well, you've got another 40 years to benefit off that grounded knowledge. I mean, you never stop learning, but I was very fortunate that the individuals I worked for wouldn't promote me until I really learnt the whole subject, and then you got promoted. And I think that's very beneficial. And I think, we see these opportunities come up, grab them with both hands. Don't worry about if someone says no, because it's like buses. Another opportunity will come up. Travel if it inspires you to travel. Go and do tournaments. Go and do a grow-in. Reach out to people. Just send an email. I'm interested in the work that you're doing. Can you tell me a bit more about it? Greenkeepers are known the world over to, open their arms, share information. We're all very much cut from the same cloth, and it's very easy to buy into other people's philosophies and share information.
Getting back to the Royal Automobile Club here, must be an extraordinarily exciting place with historic elements to it. Must be a wonderful place to work. Do you sometimes pinch yourself that you're actually working here?
I think it's really cool. We had a tour quite recently of our motor house that's just been refurbished, and they was going through some of the history of how the club began, how they all came together. Even to the point of how the AA started out, which I never knew, and it was in the early periods of the club in the early 1900s. The government at that time were thinking about introducing speed cameras of all things, and the club had a huge influence because we were the home of motoring. It wasn't really even even though the government sort of had the overriding, we were very much we would give advice. So the government felt that that these new motor cars, we ought to have not speed cameras, but speed control on them. But some of our members were so incensed with that. It's like, well, you can't stop cars. We're entitled to have great fun. But the club we had a lot of influential members, and we felt that we couldn't go against the government. So a group broke away because they didn't agree with the rest of the membership to form their own association called the Automobile Association, which then began the AA. And all that recovery was all on the back of that the club felt that when the members went out driving out for the day, when they got to certain locations, that there would be a guide and help, and then this guide then developed into having some mechanical skills, because if our members broke down, and then the club thought, well, this is so good, let's roll this out, and that's how we had the breakdown service. So, even though that my responsibility is to manage the golf course, it's actually really nice being a part of a big national organisation with so much history. And one of the things that we try to do is bring some of that history back onto the golf courses. So on our golf flags, we have tyre tread patterns, and and they're linked back to the club because they all represent great races that the club used to organise. So it's nice linking history with the work that we're doing. And we have new guys that we get new team members here, and it's nice to say to them not only that you're here to work on a golf course, but this is the history of the club and and the impact, and that's kind of really nice.
Well, thank you very much for inviting us at Turf Matters to come and speak to you here at the Royal Automobile Club. Thank you very much for your time, and much appreciated. I love chatting to you. Nice to see you again after all these years.
Yeah, and thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you. Lovely.